Thank you, Akansha. Honorable Shri Ranjan Kumar Singh ji, we are really honored to have your presence over here. Distinguished panelists, guests, our hosts, and our dear future of the country. Very warm welcome to this thought-provoking and intellectually stimulating discussion that brings together such diverse minds to reflect on a topic that sits at the crossroad of innovation, responsibility, and humanity. And it is also so thrilling to be having this discussion at a time when we have just landed on moon, and of course this is something that everybody has been talking about, but it is also a moment when the global community has been increasingly recognizing the scientific achievements of this country. And our scientists are so enthusiastically pushing towards innovation and ingenuity. So in times like these, it's so wonderful to have such a distinguished panel with extraordinary convergence of expertise. We have, such a diverse panel that you can see in the background. And while the panelists will be giving their viewpoints, I would like to invite you, our engaged audience, to reflect, question, and contribute to this discourse. So in talking about, just starting this discussion, I was really touched by the words of Dr. Pami Dua, which still resonate in my mind and actually set the tone of the discussion, wherein she had said, if the approach is value-based, the research will also reflect that. She so beautifully put it up. So just to set the tone, and also because we have so many youngsters sitting over here, what are the principles of the foundation of the scientific research that we so very much talk about, and we have been talking about and hearing from our other panelists so much so?
Thank you very much, Suvira. So I will talk about the foundations of research, what is meant by academic integrity, research integrity, what is the role of values and principles in determining academic integrity, and how values can feed into our research work. But first of all, I would like to put on record the stellar outcome of path-breaking research of a scientist with the successful landing on the south pole of the moon. So we all owe our hearty congratulations and appreciation to the scientists of ISRO, communities of ISRO, other scientific communities, CSIR with all its testing that it did, also the Vikram Sarabhai Space Center, and also the Bhabha Atomic Research Center with its subatomic research, which is the foundational research for this kind of work. So what this has done is it has put research on a very high pedestal for us, because this is collaborative research. It brought together a number of communities, number of eminent scientists, and there is integrity in the research. So we have set in India very high standards for ourselves. So how do we match, leave aside, pass these standards? So first of all, we have to understand what is research and what goes into the research work. So research involves original investigation. This can be theoretical or applied, but it must be ethically conducted. That is the most important thing. And it must be trustworthy and done in a socially responsible manner. So this brings us to the concept of academic integrity. That implies the pursuit of scholarly activity in an honest and responsible manner. Now, if we have to do research in an honest and responsible manner, we have to have a value system in the research. In the ecosystem of research, we require a value system, and academic integrity rests on 5 values: honesty, trust, fairness, respect, and responsibility. Now, it's not enough to say that we should have these values. We should have the courage to uphold these values. So the most important thing in academic integrity is to have the courage and determination to uphold all these values. Now, to these values, we can add principles of research, and I define 6 fundamental principles of research, which then reinforce the values. And these principles are excellence, integrity, cooperation, accountability, training, and safety. Now, if we go back to our fundamental values, just a little bit about each value. So if I start with the first one, honesty. So honesty is the foundation of teaching, learning, research, service, and is a prerequisite for the realization of trust, fairness, respect, and responsibility. Second is trust. So trust is a necessary foundation for any research work, and it allows us to collaborate, share information, and circulate new ideas freely. Now, trust will foster fairness and respect. Fairness, this is essential for the establishment of any ethical institution or environment, and it is also something that all institutions should follow, and if it's an academic institution, then all the faculty, administrators, students, all have the right to expect fair treatment. The next one is respect, which implies showing respect to other people's research by citing their research, and also helping peers, colleagues, students in their research work, openness in research. And then we have the 5th value, which is responsibility. So this implies that each individual in any institution, academic or otherwise, has the responsibility to uphold the research practices of that institution. And that is a very big responsibility, because responsibility of this kind leads to accountability. And what we need to deliver on these 5 values, as I said, was courage. So this is required to translate the 5 values from talking points into action, standing up for them in the face of pressure and adversity. So if we combine these 6 values with fundamental principles, first, excellence, strive for excellence in research and produce work of the highest quality, which we all agree to. Integrity, we comply with all legal and ethical requirements and declare any potential or actual conflicts of interest. Then we have cooperation, which will facilitate open exchange of ideas, research methods, data, and results. Then the 4th is accountability, which would ensure transparency and compliance. And then the 5th is training and skills, which involves training and development opportunities to researchers to ensure they have necessary skills for research. And finally, we have safety, that is, research work has to ensure safety and well-being of all involved in research, and also avoid risk or harm to research subjects. So what I have tried to do here is to give values as the basis for research, as the basis for defining what is academic integrity and research integrity. But if I have a minute, I just want to add one more thing. So here we ensure that the integrity is met, but at the same time, I want to point out that values can also feed into your research, and it can help to solve or at least mitigate complex global problems. So, for instance, there is a lot of talk about achieving sustainable development goals. Now, we always talk about sustainability models, and we say that we should have the right economic factors, social factors, environmental factors. But we have never looked into it and said we should be conscious of what each individual does. If every individual is conscious of what they do, then it would be easier to meet the sustainable development goals. And in this context, I had the privilege to co-supervise a PhD thesis of a student in the Dialbag Educational Institute, which was on the role of communities in achieving sustainable development goals. And what this thesis says, and for the sake of the students, this is also available on Shodh Ganga, that we can look at the social environmental factors and also the economic factors, but we have to add to this the inner dimension. So inner dimension means we have to take into account our values, our beliefs, our attitudes, our consciousness, our conscientiousness, and then we can make sure that each individual works in a particular way that we move towards the achievement of sustainable development goals. So this is the crux of the work done by Dr. Arshdeer, who is the PhD research scholar. Of course, the thesis has now been approved and the doctoral degree has been awarded. But it makes a very good point in terms of this complex problem of the world. So
Thank you so much, Dr. Dua.
All right, thank you very
Yes.
much.
In fact, because of the paucity of time, we'll have to move forward. And the foundation of the whole discussion of whatever we have been discussing today is indeed research integrity and realizing the importance of research integrity for even the work that we do at Springer Nature. You must have heard about it from Stephen and also from the panelists in every discussion. Springer Nature, in collaboration with Ministry of Education and many important institutes, societies, and of course academies of India, has taken up an initiative about which you will hear very soon. And I would really like to invite all of you to participate in that, because now you know how important is research integrity, so that we all can be of further use to you and can support you in this endeavor. So moving on, Dr. Agarwal, we have heard about in such a depth the fundamentals of what should the scientific research be based on. So moving on from fundamentals to implementation, what are the first thoughts that come to your mind?
Very good afternoon, and thanks for giving me this opportunity. And I'd like to congratulate the organizers, the Ministry of Education and Government of India and Springer Nature for this wonderful meeting. First to reiterate what Professor Dua has said, research is something which leads to advancement of science. Without research, we cannot have progress. All these wonderful drugs we now use for treatment has come from phase 3 placebo-controlled randomized controlled trials. They are beautifully conducted. Now, issue is conducting the research ethically and properly according to the guidelines. And, I'll talk about biomedical research, which is more challenging because of the direct involvement of patients, And so all the more responsibility, those of you who are doing biomedical research, please go through the ICMR guidelines, which are very robust, which have been revised recently. Both Ministry of Health and ICMR put a huge document which talks about a lot of aspects of research, like formation of the ethics committee, the informed consent, research in special groups. And all you need to is follow these guidelines. They're in very simple language. Follow these guidelines, go through the guidelines in detail, and then consider research. Obviously, the onus of ethical research lies with the researcher. The integrity and honesty of the research is of paramount importance. Because I'll tell you, research can lead to excellent outcomes, outcomes which lead to upliftment of mankind. But it can lead to very dangerous outcomes which can really cause havoc. And sometimes it can be half-truths. For example, I'll give you an example. If you do public health research on obesity, there's a topic which I deal with. I'm a bariatric surgeon. I read a lot about obesity and other things. A particular study might say the obesity is due to increased high-calorie food intake and poor lifestyle habits. So that would mean, counseling each and every person with a, dietitian and a psychologist. But on the other hand, it has neglected the environmental and systemic factors. Okay? So it is not gone into things like, the obesogenic environment and diet. And that's why, our Honorable Prime Minister has started laying emphasis on yoga and also millets, which are of low glycemic index, are local foods. And these sort of initiatives and a research into it probably would complement the research, public health research and lead to more meaningful outcomes. So I think these are the things one should look at. The other aspect is the publishing of research, and there's a huge, I'm an editor of a few journals, and I know where the loopholes lie. But having said that, I think if you are honest about a research, honest about plagiarism, go through the guidelines, I think you can publish into good quality journals. Another point is the translational aspect of the research. Okay, so research is something we do for a lot of reasons, for advancement of career, for finding new treatments, but sometimes what is important for society is translational research, where you can translate a particular outcome into a more wider for the masses benefit. So for that, we need to involve various stakeholders, like industry, like patient groups itself. I'll talk about, I focus on biomedical. So patient groups themselves, when educated, could be a part of translational research. But there are certain other negatives to translational research or big data research. We need big data. Somebody was talking about creation of big data for research, but then there are problems of consent there. When we do research, we take a consent for a particular project. But when we have a big data, you can use it for multiple projects and without any informed consent. So the patient doesn't know where the data is going, what is being used for, and that's a challenge for the further discussion. And the third aspect is incorporating research on ethical and social implications right at the onset of big research projects. And this is, I'll just give you an example, very small. My Human Genome Project in US, right at the onset of the project, they put 5% of the budget for just to study the impact on society, on ethics, not at the end of the project, when these guys worked with the researchers. So what was the impact of genetic counseling? What will be the impact on discrimination, employment? So all these points are really important as far as ethics and social implications research is concerned. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Agarwal. In fact, taking forward this discussion from fundamentals to implementation, Dr. Sahu, I would like to invite you to reflect on the societal implications, because especially from the research area that you come from, and that has a lot of relevance to a country like us.
Thank you, Surya, and thanks the organizer for giving this opportunity. A very good afternoon to all of you. Just I would like to take the points from Madam Do and Dr. Agarwal. Whatever research we are doing or leading to innovation or technology development, and ultimately it should go to the societal level. And we should measure the impact, as he was mentioning very well right now. And we have listened to excellent panelists beforehand. And what exactly is happening, if you will see most of our research, we should ask ourselves whether it is going to the end users or not. In one hand, just I will cite the, I will give emphasis on 2 or 3 points. The first point, the equity access. Take the study of global healthcare or the medical advancement, the technological advancement in healthcare, what has happened. And how far it is reaching. All the technologies, whatever is being developed or to be developed or developing, it should reach at the societal level to the end users, to the bottom level of the, or poorest of the poor persons. There should be equitable access. As long as equitable access is not there, benefit sharing is not there, probably we are not doing justice to the research. So each of the research, each of the project, whatever or any or aspect we are looking into, probably there should be equitable access. We have to address the most important component, how it will be reaching to the down level. And the most important role which is going to be played in this is the knowledge, the communication, the media. They are going to play a very major role in this regard. They can give a positive shape, give a negative shape to a research findings. The third most important thing I will mention here, the inclusiveness. If you are thinking of, just now we are running one workshop in our organization, just to cite, we are discussing on leach. As an institute like freshwater aquaculture, we don't want leach. Couple of days back, Director General Ayush, he called me that we would like to join hands with you to help us to propagate the leach. So I was telling we have never thought of that. We are thinking of how to get rid of this. But he is telling it has a lot of scope, lot of advantages. In fact, we are debating on, and the debate is continuing. In between I escaped. So that's what I mean to say in this, that if we will go with inclusiveness, with involving the organizations which we don't think that they are really going to contribute to our findings, to our research or anything. So probably you will do very novel kind of research which will touch the bottom level of persons or the farmers or the society, it will touch. So we have to think, we have to maintain a balance both with the theoretical and practical research. So these are the 3 points initially I would like to again highlight later on, whatever will be coming in the discussion. Thank you.
In fact, the topic that we are discussing is so deep and vast that many a times for the young people who are sitting over here, it just bounces off the head. So for the benefit of the young colleagues who are sitting over here, just 1 or 2 points very, very quickly that comes to each one of you. What should they be doing when they are maybe writing a research paper or when they are engaged in a research project? What are the 2 things that quickly come to your mind that they should be looking at? Maybe Dr. Dua, you can start with.
Well, the first thing that all the students should be doing is that they should be aware of what are the standards of academic integrity and also research integrity, what are the ethical frameworks, the legal frameworks, compliance with all of these frameworks, and what is the meaning of research misconduct, and what happens if you violate one of these ethical standards. And research misconduct can be of various types. For shortage of time, I'll just mention them. We have fabrication of data, falsification of data, plagiarism, and there are a lot more things we can say about scientific experiments. So you have to be aware of violation of these standards because there would be also penalties for violating them. And we don't want to get into that. You have to uphold the values of integrity. That is the most important thing. And you must maintain the research culture of the institution that you are in. Thank you.
You very rightly said, because in many of the workshops that I do, people ask what will happen, like, if there are these misconducts. Your research, what you write is your labor of love. And if there is a blot on what you have written, then there is a question mark on your career ahead. So don't let that happen to you. And be very, very sure of what you are publishing. Over to you, Dr.
Yeah, so research involves a lot of hard work and patience, and there are no shortcuts. So if you want your research to be meaningful, you don't want your research, you work 3 to 4 years and find out somebody has already done this. So I think it's important to define the knowledge gap. So research question arises from the knowledge gap, and for finding the knowledge gap, you have to work hard on the current knowledge, current literature. I found out, a lot of our postgraduates and fellows come to us for projects, and I tell them always, please look where do you want to work in. You have seen the patients, the kind of practice we have. Take out 10 to 15 very good articles published in high-impact journals. Go through them verbatim. Find out where is the lacunae. There are something which are between the lines you have to sometimes read. And that's the way you define the research question. So defining the research question, which will be meaningful, which will impact in terms of our biomedical research, the patient outcomes, patient-linked outcomes. So we have to really work hard on finding the correct research question and then framing it. No, you may have a vague idea of the research question, but you have to frame it precisely in terms of various parameters, the duration of the research, the intended primary and secondary outcomes, and the ethical issues involved in it. Are we dealing with special groups? And then obviously write a nice project. And the most important component of a research is informed consent and a patient information sheet. So a consent which is informed, and there are various parameters to define the informed consent, and there are various, that's where I think that your integrity lies, informing the patient or the participant correctly about the intervention. Does he have low risk? Some papers may quote a very low risk, some papers may quote a high risk, but it's your duty to inform about both the outcomes, the low risk as well as the high risk complication. Otherwise, you are not being ethical, you're not being honest. I think these are the two critical points I would like to share.
In other words, there has to be a reason to publish, and not just to publish for the sake of publications and meeting the criteria that your master's or PhD requires. So if you keep in mind what the two panelists have said, then moving on to Dr. Sahu, then you will be reaching a full circle in terms of publishing ethically.
Just I would like to add on two more important points. One is conclusiveness. Whenever we should not jump into a conclusion which will be misleading. That is very important in our research publications. Maybe based on the result we are leading to some sorts of conclusion. Probably, maybe at the end of 5 or 10 years, the conclusion what we have given to the publication, one particular manuscript, it might be misleading. So the statement should be very, very careful, it should not mislead. That is one thing. And another thing is openness. We should be very open in our findings. Very open in our findings. So that tomorrow, somebody who is going to read your manuscript or read your publication, he will get a good conclusion out of that. So these two things should be there in a proper way. Just these are some submissions.
In fact, moving on from the fundamentals and all these aspects, what are the recommendations that you all would like to give very briefly again? Because the other panels were had so many people, so our time has been really limited. So very quickly, if we can say, what are the recommendations that you would have for the institutes where we have such young minds?
The most important thing is that each institution should have the standards, academic and research and ethical standards clearly stated. And these should be made available to all stakeholders of that institution, because unless they know what the standards are, they will not know what they have to follow. So these standards, and also there should be research integrity policies that are in place. And both the standards and the policies should be updated on a regular basis, taking feedback from the stakeholders. And sometimes institutions say that they don't have funds to do this, so this doesn't require funds, and even if they don't have it, they have to get it from somewhere, because this is the most important thing that an institution should have to ensure fair research and responsible research, and that is good for the institution itself, and of course for each student or faculty member.
Yeah, I think it's important to have a research section which will have ongoing research orientation programs. So you would have a series of lectures on some stats, on research ethics, on how to conduct research, how to publish, and we are fortunate at AIIMS New Delhi to have a big research section with a dean research, sub-dean research, and their entire focus is into create a research culture of doing research ethically. Of course, they also talk about how to procure funding. And so these are important aspects if you need to lay emphasis on the correct research, because every semester these new guys come, they're very bright people, they're really bright, come through very tough competition, but they need to be oriented into the right methodology. They need to be aware that research is not something we write a thesis. We need to, and thesis learning is the first step where they need to learn the right things. So at the stage of thesis itself, the guide should lay emphasis on all the critical steps of research, so that's one part. And the second thing I think is we should also focus on the cost effectiveness of research. That point I missed in the initial discussion is that we need to find low-cost solutions in our country where there's a huge population and there's a dearth of resources. We cannot, like for example, I'll give you an example. So we might have a research on robotic surgery being superior to conventional surgery, maybe a 2% benefit. But we can't have robots in every district hospital or something like that. So we need to focus on research where our priorities lie. And I think we should sensitize the young population, the residents, the fellows, that the research should be able to impact the masses. I think, and in that regard, the role of a research section and a research orientation becomes very important.
What you said is very rightly at the foundation of whatever is happening in this country, because we have two extremes in this country. We are producing some of the fastest, we are really growing very fast in our research outputs, which also means that research is on the right track, but at the same time, we are also getting certain question marks on whatever we are producing. So to do the balancing act, I think these things are really very important for the researchers as well as the institutes and policymakers to be adhering to. Over to you, Dr. Saha.
Yeah, again, I will highlight your stress upon the bridging the knowledge gap. That is very crucial, very crucial. Whatever research findings we are getting in any kind of research, and when it is being translated to the downstream or reaching out to the downstream, the knowledge gap, filling the knowledge gap is very, very crucial. Perhaps the right use of media, right use of communications, right use of spreading the technology, it should be properly used. Just I will cite one example of agricultural research, like for example, we are developing some, through classical selection approach, some varieties we are developing. If it is not being properly interpreted, it will be leading like many times we used to face research, they are all GMOs. There is a misnomer of GMOs without understanding. So that's what I exactly want to point out. It should be properly translated, properly communicated to the bottom level. So that is very crucial, whatever research findings we are getting. So that's all from my side.
With that, I would like to invite the audience. Maybe we can take 2 questions. Please, the volunteers, if you can give the...
Very good evening to all of you. I'm Professor Bhavia, Director, Institute of Chemical Technology. My question is to Dr. Agarwal. Dr. Agarwal, you mentioned about some of the trials on randomized placebo, double-blind, and so on. Now, we have seen during COVID, there were a number of publications which came with the trial and error of number of combinations and all. And there were a lot of papers which were published. And I see there are publications which are coming where there are different brands are also mentioned, where the data is generated and the brands are also mentioned. I would like to have your opinion on what are the legal issues on these, publishing these data, social implications, and ethical issues. Thank you.
I think it's a fantastic question. I think COVID was a very special circumstance when a lot of people were working from home and had a lot of time to write things, and people went overboard writing. I can tell you from my own experience that we are having online meetings morning, evening, thinking about what to write, what not to write. And in that context, a lot of publications were not properly peer-reviewed. So the idea of a good publication is should be peer-reviewed. That means it's been peer-reviewed by the experts in that field. But unfortunately, a lot of COVID-related publications did not get peer-reviewed properly because there was huge number of publications, humongous number of publications. Everybody was writing right and left, even those who never touched a pen. So that is one aspect that there was not proper, even for very good journals. The second aspect of what you're saying is mentioning the brands and all. I think that's best left to the editors because that is where the article should have been rejected at the technical level. So one is, before the peer review, there's a technical check we do as an editor, that is there a plagiarism? Is there is there a mention of the institute? Is there a conflict of interest statement? Is there an ethical clearance? I can tell you 50% of the research quoted in COVID has not been ethically approved by the Institutional Ethics Committee. So I would leave that era, there's an aberration, an anomaly. I think we should just try to move forward. And I think for research to be truly correct, legal, it should be peer-reviewed, it should be published in good journal, and it should have been done by people who are experts in it. One aspect has been people who are not even experts in this field were quoting things and writing articles. I mean, I don't know to say, radiologists might be talking about vaccination and immunology. So these things are happening. But I think we should move on from that era. If you analyze the COVID literature very authentically, I think 90% of the article would go into the garbage bin. This is my take on it.
Yeah. I think that was also a time that really proved that science is fallible, contextually situated, and never pure. And it is learning by mistake.
Add one little point. I mean, I'll tell you, a patient came to me recently of chronic kidney failure. He said, "Sir, is vaccination led to kidney disease? Because I was sitting in dialysis room. All the patients who had kidney failure had vaccination." When I look, 140 billion people had vaccination, and we are having diseases. That does not mean there's an association between vaccination and diseases. Vaccination has done a wonderful job. I think government of India has done a wonderful job of vaccinating such a huge population and protecting us from COVID. But now with the media picking up a single adverse reaction, which has not been proven in the adverse reaction committee. For any adverse reaction, I am a part of the adverse reaction committee, we have to look at the cause and effect relationship. Without proving that, media is putting it in the newspaper and it's causing a lot of misinformation in the media. So, and this is the result. Patient come and ask you, has vaccination led to this? Has vaccination led to obesity? Has vaccination led to cardiac failure? I think that's where role of responsible media comes in. I think they should also be bound with some legal this thing. But I think we need to follow guidelines about publishing medical literature in journals as well as media itself. I think that's the need of the hour.
We can very quickly take just one question.
Yeah, ma'am, it's wonderful to be in this session. I am Dr. Sonalika Rath from IMS and Some Hospital Department of Microbiology. I would like to ask this question to Pammi ma'am. Ma'am, there is a burden of publication in institutional level for academic growth. So this really hampers the ethics in research. So how to address it at institutional level?
Sorry, can you just repeat that question? So at the institutional level?
Ma'am, how can we address it at the institutional level? Actually, the burden of publications that is there for the academic purpose, in some reputed institutions also, you have to get this number of publications within this much of time. So it really hampers the ethics. So how can we address this at institutional level?
Yes, I think it has to be done at the institutional level because this pressure to publish actually leads one to go to these lower quality journals, and also a number of predatory journals have come up. And I find also that some of the rules for promotion require X number of publications. And sometimes when I'm reviewing candidates, I find that 6 publications are in July of 2022. So that's impossible. So this is a real issue, and that it has to be discussed at the institutional level, and the standards have to be tightened there. And also each institution can have its own list of journals as well, if it wants to go in that direction. But that would be very controversial at the institutional level. But I see that many of the so-called approved journals are also not of good quality, and also are publishing on payment basis. So that is an issue, but I don't know if any institution can resolve this issue because it will lead to a lot of controversy at the institution level. But I appreciate the problem and sympathize with it, but also live with it. So, yeah.
Yeah, okay, Dr. Agarwal, very quickly.
Yeah, it's an interesting question, but I would differ from Professor Dua, most respectfully, whatever. As an academician in an institution of excellence, or even in a teaching institute, you need to have research and publications. And as I said, research is hard work, and publication is harder. So you need to go home and sit in the front of the computer outside of working hours. I think if you are in academics, love writing, love to write, love to publish, Even as a surgeon, I mean, I'm not saying that. I mean, we operate the whole day and we go back in the evening and maybe for the love of research and publications, publish our results, publish our thesis. I would say, you should love that job. And I don't think having 2 good publications a year is a big job. I mean, it needs time. A good 1 or 2 good publications require 1 year. But I think in a 5 year, when you have an appraisal in 5 years, I don't think it's a big task to have 5 good publications. Sorry about totally, being.
This is an endless.
Just in one sentence, just to clarify my stand. My stand was to do with quality of publications, and we are compromising a lot on that. So that was the point I was making, and I'm sure all these people are also working very hard after having dinner and after a full day's work, but quality is somehow getting compromised here.
At the same time, the very pertinent question of publish or perish, and that being linked with the promotions, etc., and also NARC rating, these are some of the very important issues, and we have ministry over here, so many directors, and Professor Sahasrabuddhe has just, I can't see him here, but these are some of the things that can be taken up at their level to see how we ensure that quality publications are there. And the whole focus is more on quality rather than on quantity. And as publishers, I can tell you we are doing a lot to support you, the researchers, in ensuring that you are able to showcase the impact of your work, because that's the most important thing towards the end of the day. With that, I think we really think it has been an inspiring discussion, and I really hope that with these insights, these conversations can continue for long, and we'll be able to come up with something which is of support to the young researchers over there. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Subhra. Certainly, we need to move from the concept of publish or perish to cherish the journey and embrace the failure. Even if I understand it can be difficult, but let's stay in the boundaries of ethics and embrace the failures, because in the end, it's a win-win for everyone. Subhra, now I would request you to felicitate, starting with Dr. Pammi. Let's have a huge round of applause for all the 4 panels and our moderators and panelists.